Kevin always believed love was about safety, about choosing someone who made the world feel less chaotic. And for a while, Hannah was that person. Or at least, she seemed to be. She was magnetic, sharp-witted, and beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare. When she laughed, the room leaned in. When she smiled at him, he felt like the luckiest man alive. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the warmth and the charm, Kevin carried a quiet fear that he was only loved for his steadiness, not for who he truly was. That if he ever stopped agreeing, stopped bending, she'd pull away. He tried to ignore it, tried to believe that their love could weather anything. He convinced himself that compromise was strength and silence was maturity. But love without balance is a slow erasure. He started losing little pieces of himself, his voice and decisions, his place in the home, his role in their future. Still, he held on, because hope can be louder than doubt, and fear disguised as devotion can look a lot like loyalty. It wasn't until everything fell apart that Kevin realized, sometimes, what we think is love is just the fear of being alone dressed up in pretty words. It started with the house, just a simple signature Hannah had said, one that would make refinancing easier. Less paperwork, more peace of mind, she smiled, twirling her keys like the idea was no big deal. Kevin, ever trusting, didn't argue. Why would he? They were partners, weren't they? A team. But soon after came the car. Then the joint account that became her solo playground. The credit card she opened just for emergencies. Kevin watched, confused but too polite to press. Every change was wrapped in charm, tied up with reassurance. It's all the same, Kevin. It's ours. But each time he agreed, something was quietly taken. Not just assets, but power. She masked control as convenience, and he convinced himself that love meant letting go. But late at night, when the house was still and her side of the bed was cold, Kevin would stare at the ceiling, a strange unease growing in his chest, like he'd handed over the keys to something far more valuable than property. His instinct whispered, this isn't right. But the louder voice, loyalty, kept him quiet. He didn't realize until it was too late that Hannah hadn't been planning a future together. She'd been building an escape hatch. Every contract signed, every account transferred, was another brick in the exit she was crafting behind his back. Kevin had mistaken her planning for partnership, and by the time the truth surfaced, she already owned nearly everything but his name, and even that she'd tried to rewrite. The warmth began to fade gradually, like a dimmer switch turning down the light on everything that used to be. Hannah, once all laughter and affection, began to withdraw in ways that were subtle but sharp. Her touches became rare, her glances colder. She stopped waiting up for Kevin, stopped asking how his day went. Her side of the bed felt like a different continent. And when he tried to bridge the distance, suggest a weekend getaway, cook her favorite meal, offer a quiet moment of connection, she waved it off with excuses. I'm tired, she'd mutter, eyes glued to her phone. I just need space to think. Kevin tried to be patient. He believed in rough patches, in holding on through the silence. But soon, the silence became the norm. She began calling him predictable, as if steadiness were a curse. Once, she compared him to a houseplant, always there, but not really exciting. It stung, not because it was cruel, but because it was calculated. Every word chipped away at his self-worth. Still, he told himself love was patient. He reminded himself that relationships ebb and flow. But late at night, when the glow of her screen lit her face more than his presence ever could, Kevin began to understand. This wasn't a lull. This was detachment. She wasn't just distant. She was already somewhere else, emotionally packed and halfway gone. And the worst part? She left just enough kindness behind to keep him hoping, to keep him from letting go. The call came on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day already heavy with gloom. Kevin was sorting invoices in his office when his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He almost ignored it. Almost. Mr. Marshall, the voice said, too formal, too sharp. We're calling in regard to an overdue balance of $31,876 on your joint account with Ms. Hannah Marshall. His heart stuttered. What account, he asked, though part of him already knew. The voice hesitated, reciting details Kevin had never seen before. Credit cards, designer charges, spa weekends, airline tickets. His name was on all of them. Co-signed, bound, betrayed. That evening, he confronted Hannah. She was on the couch, sipping wine and scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. When he told her, she blinked once, then scoffed. It's not even that much, Kevin. You're being dramatic. She said it like he was nagging her over dirty dishes. He showed her the printouts. She rolled her eyes. You're such a buzzkill. That word, buzzkill, landed like a slap. In that moment, Kevin realized the truth. He wasn't her partner. He was her safety net, her ATM, her emotional wallpaper. He had given her his trust, his name, his everything, and she had used it like a credit line she never intended to repay. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. She'd stolen from the quiet part of him that still believed in their vows. And standing there, holding the paper trail of her deceit, Kevin felt something crack that wouldn't heal. Not this time. The divorce didn't come with shouting or shattered dishes. It came with cold signatures and calculated silences. Hannah filed first. No discussion, no counseling. Just a manila envelope left on the kitchen counter like it was an Amazon return. Her timing was surgical. Right after she'd secured every asset in her name. The house, the SUV, even the joint savings account were all suddenly hers, and the paper trail proved it. Kevin sat in stunned silence as her lawyer painted him as emotionally unavailable, financially unstable, and distant, a ghost in his own marriage. He barely recognized the version of himself being described. But worse, he saw how effortlessly she played the victim. Friends who once shared meals at their table now looked at him like a stranger. Hannah had always been good with people, charisma on demand, and she used it now like a scalpel, slicing away at his character while smiling sweetly through court proceedings. He lost everything but his clothes, his worn-out truck, and a barbecue grill he had a fight to keep. Even his retirement fund, something he had carefully nurtured over decades, was halved. And yet, through it all, Kevin didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse or accuse. He walked out of the courthouse numb, carrying a box of files and a heavy heart. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, legal, clean, and that made it worse. Hannah hadn't just broken the marriage. She'd buried it, dressed it up for court, and handed him a shovel. All with a smile. Lightning doesn't usually strike twice, but for Kevin, it hit the day after he signed the final divorce papers. He stopped at a rundown gas station, weary and hollowed out, to grab a bottle of water. On a whim, and maybe a silent prayer, he bought 2 scratch-off tickets. One was a dud. The other changed everything. At first, he thought it was a misprint. He checked the numbers 3 times. Then again in the harsh fluorescent glow of the store. $6.2 million. His hands trembled. His breath caught. Not joy, not yet, just disbelief. He didn't shout or celebrate. He drove home slowly, heart pounding, every mile another layer of shock settling in. That night, he didn't sleep. He stared at the ticket on his kitchen counter. The same counter where Hannah had once dropped divorce papers. This time, he didn't tell anyone. Not even Riley, his oldest friend. He called a lawyer the next morning, Erica, a friend of a friend known for her unshakable resolve. And together, they formed a plan. A trust, a quiet strategy, a way to protect what was his. Kevin knew this wasn't just luck. It was a second chance, and he wasn't going to fumble it. The money wasn't for revenge. It was for rebuilding, for peace, for silence uninterrupted by deceit. He paid off his truck, invested smartly, and stayed small on the outside. No flashy cars, no social media flex. Because deep down, he wasn't celebrating the money. He was honoring the lesson. Sometimes, freedom comes not with fury, but with quiet, calculated grace. Kevin had been waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it did, it wore heels and lipstick. It started with a text. Hey stranger, thinking about you lately. Want to catch up? Harmless on the surface. But Kevin felt the weight behind it, the way you feel a storm before it hits. He didn't respond. Days later, another ping lit up his phone. I heard a rumor. Hope it's not true. But if it is, maybe we should talk. That one made his stomach turn. The rumor. Of course. Somehow, word of his lottery win had leaked, probably through the grapevine of small-town gossip, hairdressers, and nosy acquaintances. And just like that, the ghost of Hannah came clawing at the door. She hadn't reached out during the divorce. Not once. But now, she had a reason. Kevin didn't reply. He forwarded every message to Erica and let silence be his answer. But Hannah wasn't done. She showed up at his workplace, uninvited, smiling like they were still a couple. Left muffins on his doorstep. Called crying on voicemail about fate, about soulmates. She spun tales of nostalgia, begging for a second chance. But all Kevin felt was dread. He checked his locks at night, slept with one eye open. What had once been love now felt like surveillance, her obsession bleeding into desperation. Kevin realized she wasn't just reaching out. She was hunting for something. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but access. And Kevin had learned, painfully and thoroughly, that some doors are meant to stay locked forever. The courtroom felt more like a stage than a place of justice. Except this time, Kevin wasn't the one fumbling his lines. Hannah arrived with her usual flair, armed with dramatics and a lawyer who looked far too confident for someone about to be steamrolled. She was suing Kevin, claiming he had intentionally concealed assets, aka the lottery winnings, during the divorce. It was absurd, laughable even, but Kevin didn't laugh. He just handed everything over to Erica. She was a force of nature in a blazer, calmly presenting receipts, tax records, timestamp statements, and a signed letter from the lottery commission itself. Kevin had one after the divorce was finalized. Ironclad, unshakable. The judge skimmed the documents, raised a brow, and, without fanfare, dismissed the case with prejudice. Final. Belmano. Hannah's confidence cracked like glass. She stood frozen, her mouth parted in disbelief as the reality sank in. Her fairy tale comeback had crashed before the second act. Kevin didn't gloat. He didn't even look her way. He simply thanked the judge, shook Erica's hand, and walked out. Outside the courthouse, he took a breath so deep it felt like he was inhaling freedom. People talked, said she screamed at her lawyer, wept in the parking lot, blamed everyone but herself. But Kevin didn't see it, didn't care to. That chapter was done, closed, bound in legal ink. And for the first time in years, he felt truly untouchable, not because of the money, but because he'd finally stopped letting her rewrite his story. Hannah's last desperate card was one Kevin had seen coming, the grand, cinematic scene. She showed up at his job, dressed like she was stepping onto a red carpet instead of a concrete loading dock. Full glam, fake tears glistening in her eyes, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "Kevin," she said loudly, catching the attention of nearby coworkers. "Please, I made a mistake. I should never have let you go." Kevin didn't flinch. He didn't need to. The weight of her words bounced off him like rain on stone. Calmly, he replied, "This is harassment. Leave now, or I'll have my lawyer handle it." Her expression faltered. She hadn't expected this version of him. Not the man who stood firm, unshaken, immune to her theatrics. "You wouldn't call the cops on your wife," she whispered, still trying to play to the audience. Kevin stared at her, his voice quiet but razor sharp. "You're not my wife. You're a stranger in expensive makeup." That was the moment she realized the spell had broken. There would be no second chance, no redemption arc. Kevin had outgrown the cage she built around his loyalty. He walked away from her the same way he walked away from their marriage, deliberately, peacefully, powerfully. Later, while sipping coffee on his porch, Kevin thought about her last performance. There was no rage in him, no pity either, just a quiet relief. Some endings don't need fireworks, just the courage to keep walking and never look back. Kevin didn't celebrate with yachts or champagne. He celebrated with silence, sunsets, and second chances. He bought a modest lake house with creaky floorboards and a view that made mornings feel sacred. He spent his weekends fishing off the dock, listening to the water lap against the wood like a lullaby. No more drama. No more walking on emotional eggshells. Just peace. He helped fund a local animal shelter, paid off his mom's mortgage, and set up a college fund for his niece. And for himself, he bought a cheap guitar and started learning to play. Badly, but joyfully. There were no lavish posts online, no boastful stories. His victories were private, personal. Sometimes, peace looked like saying no. Other times, it looked like ignoring a call from the past. He still got emails from Hannah now and then, long, rambling apologies dressed up as poetry. He forwarded them to his lawyer without reading past the subject line. Kevin had finally learned, you don't owe anything to the people who try to break you. You owe everything to the version of yourself that refused to stay broken. And that version? He was finally free. In today's world, where manipulation can hide behind charm and betrayal can be dressed up as growth, Kevin's story is a powerful reminder. Protect your peace like it's sacred. Love should never cost you your identity or your dignity. If someone constantly crosses your boundaries, wraps control in sweet words, or expects loyalty without giving it, it's not love, it's ownership. Know your worth. Keep your eyes open, your heart guarded, and your standards high. And if you ever walk away from someone who tried to break you, don't look back. Healing begins the moment you choose yourself, unapologetically.